Good morning. I'm so glad you've joined us this week for our journey with Christ. I am again joined by Sean Patrick. He'll be joining us today. Steve is still out of town visiting family. My name is Mark Mitchell. I'm the teaching minister, preaching minister at Park Avenue Church of Christ. And Sean is also a teaching minister at the Park Avenue Church of Christ. Glad you're with us again this week, buddy.
It's good to be here.
So, are you getting used to this filling Steve's seat?
I can never fill Steve's seat. But yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy talk about, well, obviously, when I started teaching the class Sunday morning, extremely nervous. I even said I'm not really teaching, I'm learning. I like to read and I like to hear people's opinions, what they think.
Mm-hmm.
It helps me. So yeah, it's been fun to do it.
I actually had I talked to a lady. She would not want me to put her name out here. I'll tell you privately. But she just was so thrilled of your job that you did last week. So you're getting fans, buddy. We're going to attempt, let's look at this. We're going to attempt a 3-camera this week. I don't know what I'm thinking because it's hard enough for me to pull off a 2-camera segment. I'm going to try 3. Who would have thought that? And I always got over here I can fool with 2. So, as we talked about last week, you brought up some great things that we were talking about on the Sermon on the Mount. And then as you opened up with me, we talked about what happened on our Tuesday, and then all of a sudden the world that we live in is kind of turned upside down, gone sideways on us. Man, who could have thought that the world could erupt in such a way?
Yeah, it's first we get the COVID-19 that comes out, then we get what happened in Minneapolis, and the next thing you know, that the world's on fire, literally.
Yeah. I don't know. As we all know, the answers are not as simple as can we all just get along. I wish they were. But they're not. But you said to us, the Sermon on the Mount is really appropriate. What do you think why that is?
Well, the reason I thought it was appropriate where Jesus, when he talked in the Sermon on the Mount, it was obviously someone was questioning about the law, that he was there to get rid of the law, and Christ says, I'm not here to get rid of the law, I'm here to fulfill it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he goes through a bunch of the law, but not only does he talks about the law, he actually kind of gets to the heart of the matter. And obviously, I think Christ knows our hearts. And he talks the first one, he talks about murder. He goes by to tell you, anyone who is angry with his brother is subject to judgment. I think Christ knows that that's where it starts. The anger, the lust when it leads to adultery. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. He says, well, I mean, it's great to love your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was the law where it was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, it was a way to limit retaliation, that you didn't go over what. So if someone smashed my finger, I could smash their finger, but I can't smash their head into the ground.
Yeah.
But Christ is like, he doesn't want us to retaliate at all. In fact, he wants us to love our enemies. So it's a tough thing. And you read it and you're like, my goodness, how in the world am I supposed to do this? And I don't know if it's even something he knows that we think we can accomplish, but by talking about it, he's kind of going to the heart of where everything begins,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of showing us this is how maybe God always wanted us to be, where we went astray somewhere, and that's why I think it comes to term, because you're seeing violence being hit with violence, and it never works out.
No, you can't, as we were mentioning earlier, countries that use force to create behavior modification, generally, it never results in the behavior that you really, really want. Sean and I have been talking a little bit before we got on camera, because what we originally intended to talk about was what does it look like following Jesus Christ? You know, because I feel like that is a topic that we're confused about. But then at the same time, we got what we got going on in our world, and the really, really difficult part is you have Christians who are angry, and at times you've got Christians who are racist. You know, at the same time, you've got people tearing down things just for the sake of tearing them down because they're angry. They're angry at a system. They're angry at a standard. But then you also have people who are just angry, period. You've got all this convergence on one moment, I guess you could say. And getting through it and getting past it is going to take more than just, can't we all get along?
Yeah. I watched a video of, his name's Richard Beck, and he's a professor at ACU, and he was talking about, he wrote a book on the devil, and he talked about the 4 different names of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very end, he got to the word the devil,
Mm-hmm.
which means the accuser.
Mm-hmm.
And I never even thought about it like that, because we went over the book of Job, and that's exactly what the devil did with Job. He said, if you do
And his
this,
three
if you
friends.
do, yeah, if you do this, he goes, he will curse your face. And he's like, and that's what, and if you think about the accuser, that you don't even know it, and the devil could use you for that particular person. You're accusing someone of something. And basically he was like, one of the most sinister thing the devil uses to accuse is right here in our minds.
Well, we today have people who can't even have a conversation about owning guns, or having discussions over whatever political spectrum dot you want to throw in here, from one extreme to the other. You will have, it would almost get pretty much guaranteed, if you talk long enough, it'll turn into a fist fight.
Yeah.
One of my most aggravating things that I to the point now I won't even watch it, is news outlets who show 3 or 4 people all arguing against each other, yelling at each other, as though that is normal behavior and that is the solution to the world that we live in. I'm thinking to myself, when did when did rudeness become acceptable behavior on a topic of discussion? I don't understand that. In fact, it's almost to the point now we elevate hate over love. We don't. Acceptance, I love our world says, can't we just accept one another? But yet, evidently we can't. Because if we don't agree with one another, then get out of here. You're a racist. You're a whatever vernacular you want to use. Everybody is your enemy unless they agree with you. I don't know how we got here. I really don't. And I don't know how we get past it.
In that video with Randy Harris, a lot of times after he talks, he said if we did these ideas, I would think that would change the world. The thing I don't agree with is I don't think we're ever going to change the world. But like I was telling you, I was like, I think we can change human beings. We can help change people, because the world is going to do what the world does. It has since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, it's just almost eating itself. And but we can, I believe that we could follow what Christ wants us to do to a T? I don't believe that. I don't think. I think that, but I do think that if we start to instill some of these things in our lives, and then we put when he says at the end that anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like the wise man built his house on the rock. We start to put him as our foundation. We start to let go of ourselves and go more towards Christ. There was in Matthew 16, in verse 24, it says, Jesus said to the disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves. And that's what I think about the Sermon on the Mount, is denying yourself. Because the instinctive reaction of the things he's talking about, or the things he's telling us, is you want revenge, you want to get mad, when you see someone attractive, you want to look to a point where you probably shouldn't. Yeah, all these things are constant battle inside you, and that's when you start to deny yourself, deny those feelings, to where you can start to try to live out the way we're supposed to.
Yeah, this turning the page on our behavior, as I've said a couple times, the idea that we actually can, through behavior, change is a complicated issue. And off camera, I told Sean this. Romans chapter 7, Paul says, what I want to do, I don't. What I don't want to do, that's what I do. Who will rescue me from this body of death? I know there are lots of times that I have no intent on behaving the way I do. But inside of me, there is this element that every now and then rears its head and shows itself. And next thing you know, it's coming out here or here if you get angry. It is inside of me, and I know I shouldn't get angry. I know I shouldn't say the things that I say. I know I shouldn't look at the things I look at. I know that I shouldn't behave the way I do when I get impatient or unkind or whatever it may be. I know that. I mean, 60 years old, almost. Been reading this book for quite a while, grew up with it. I mean, heard it all my life. I know what's not supposed to happen. But yet, I'm like everybody else. I don't care how old you are. It was funny, 20-some-year-old man who was dealing with some lust, was standing there, and there was this 90-some-year-old man. And he looked at the 20-year-old young man, looked at the 90-year-old man and said, when does all this end? This lust thing? He goes, I don't know. I'll tell you when it begins. There are certain things that just never end. Getting angry just never ends. Because I've been into the prisons. There are 70-year-old people been put in prison for murder. It just doesn't one day, it all ends. But what causes us to change can only be found truthfully. in one place, and that's Jesus Christ. You know, I feel like I'm talking the entire time. You need to step in here and save me from myself.
No, I agree, and I think we also have to really look at why we're doing this. Christ kind of goes on after he talks about the law. He kind of goes on and talks about almost like our religious practices, like when we give to the needy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't do it so everybody can see it. Kind of do it where your left hand doesn't know what your right hand is doing. And when you're in worship, go inside, and when you're praying, go inside and close the door. Don't go outside for everyone to see, because if that's what you're doing this for, well, guess what? You've got your reward. You got
Yeah.
what you came for.
You got what you were looking for.
And if you're, and of course, fasting, which you don't see much anymore, but with, you know, but if fasting, you know, you're not supposed to look. He wants you to spruce yourself up a little. Don't come in looking all hauled out so everybody knows of what you're doing.
Knows what you're doing, yeah.
And that's like, if you're doing this just
To be
so you
seen.
to be seen, if you're doing this because this church is going to be a checklist, it's like, oh, I got that off the
Man,
deal.
what a great guy Sean is. You know, did you see him do that
Yeah.
that wonderful stuff?
If that's what my whole purpose is, then I've completely gone the opposite way of what he wants.
You're
So
absolutely right.
it's we're never going to perfect it, but I think the more, even though it's always going to be there, because it's just our natural response to a lot of things. But I think the more we study, the more we learn, the more when these things do come, even when we do them, we'll react to say, that wasn't right, I shouldn't have done that. Right? It's you knew it was wrong, but that's why we have Christ and his continual cleansing. But because we can't do it if we could, he wouldn't have come and died for us.
Yeah, if it was possible to be good, Jesus would have never had to die. And I'm sure he would have preferred, as we know, at the time he spent in Gethsemane, that he wasn't really looking forward to what was
No.
going to happen. So yeah, you're exactly right there. You know, we mentioned last week, what does following Jesus look like? And you brought up a great point there. It doesn't look like a performance so that everybody notices how well you're doing. And it's not and we talked about this off camera, it's not a standard by which you get points, and somewhere down the line you get enough points to get into heaven. It is a relationship. It's sort of like, I know your relationship with your wife, Cindy. Why do you do what she wants you to do?
Because I want to make her happy.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I hope
because
so.
I love her, obviously, and
Yeah.
it's but we were talking about earlier, as I kind of think a marriage to being a Christian is a lot similar, because when you become a husband, even though I've seen it, I didn't understand what it meant to be a husband. I didn't understand what it meant to be a father when I became a father. It's something that I had to grow into and realize how much you have to give, it can't be about me, just about me anymore.
No.
And I think that's one of the things, it can't be about me anymore. I have to let go of that, because what Christ did for me, I have to let that go, and I have to put him as the focal point, or else if it still is about me, what's the point?
Yeah. I know that love is by far the most truthful motivator, because any other reasons to do something for someone is actually a form of manipulation.
Yeah.
Because if I'm doing good to you so that you'll owe me a favor in the future, that's manipulation. If I do something so that, as going back to your performance part, if I do it so these people here watching us will know that I'm being a good guy, that makes me look better to everybody else. That's performance really. I mean, there are so many reasons why people do, but the only one that matters is love. Actually, as I told Sean before, 1 Corinthians 13 is the most beautiful, one of Paul's most beautiful writings as it pertains to what life looks like, and describes all these things that's going on as far as, I don't know, I got one. You know, talking about, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. It goes on to say, if I give everything away, I am the best person in this world, as far as what everybody sees, but I have not love. In essence, what I've done is I've done this for either so you would like me, or I've done this so that I could gain an advantage over you. Love is the only reason to do anything because you want to.
Yeah. And that, at the very end of the sermon, before he gives about the wise and the foolish builders, that's when he kind of gives his warning to, saying, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but those who do my will of my Father in heaven. And he talks, I think that's where, and it says, many will say to me on this day, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not drive out demons in your name, perform many miracles? It seems to me these weren't just ordinary people that he's talking about. These are people that actually, have done things, but
Yeah.
but their motives for the reason why they were doing them were wrong. And he talks about that earlier, about watching out for false prophets. So that's where we have to be. I think what it looks like being a Christian is basically being selfless. You're doing something for, you say you do something for someone, and you're not looking for something in return. It's just because you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the love.
Yeah, it's what it looks like, but it's motivated by that love. That part that says to much when you do things for your wife, and you do things for your son, and you do things for your mother and your father. When we do things for people, we're doing it because we love them. And that's what the relationship with God and Jesus looks like, is I'm obedient because I know what he did for me. As John writes in 1 John, this is how we know what love is. Christ died for us.
Yeah.
God gave his own son. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. I still don't grasp that.
And I think a lot of people don't. I mean, we know about it, but we don't really fathom what had happened. And Christ came down in human form,
Mm-hmm.
and taught us how he wanted to teach us. He came on earth not to come down to be a king, but to serve,
Mm-hmm.
and to show us how what we should be, and then he wasn't just killed. It was probably the most humiliating death you could have, which was the crucifixion.
Mm-hmm.
And he was beaten brutally before he goes there. And it's just a kind of concept in your mind that's like, this was God that was beaten and crucified on the cross, and it was
And went through it willingly.
and went through it willingly. Obviously, when he asked God to take the cup away, he's his human nature too, that he didn't want to go through this, but he was willing to do it because he knew that's what God wanted to do. So I think we hear it and understand it, but we don't really grasp what exactly happened, what he did for us at some times.
You're exactly right. You know, we don't get the overwhelming concept of what it looks like, but in essence, as some very famous theologians and authors have said many times, and even going back to what John said in 1 John, that's what love looks like. Love doesn't look like keeping the rules. Love does keep the rules. It's like what comes first, the cart or the horse? You know.
Yeah.
I've used this example many times. I mean, but it's so true. In fact, in 1 Thessalonians, Paul writes, remembering before God and Father your work of faith, and labor of love, and steadfastness of hope. All of those things, the work was done by faith, the labor was done because of love, and the steadfastness, I mean, you just stuck it out because of hope. All those things produce something. They're not necessarily results. Those are the power behind the things that happen in your life that cause us. That's how someone can hit you, as the Sermon on the Mount, can hit you on one cheek. And you can say, not literally, but figuratively speaking, okay, if you need the other side, it's there for you too. Love can say, even when you hate me and speak all ill against me, I will still love you. I will still be kind to you. I will still do what, because love says there is no moment when it all ends. You know, there is no system that says, okay, this is all you got to do up to here. Love says, no, or at least God's love says, no, if I'm willing to die for people who don't even return my love, that's what I want you to do. Because there are a bunch of the people in the world that won't even return his love.
No, and they won't till the end. And
Nope.
And I said one time in class, I was like, I don't think we fully understand how great, what heaven's gonna, how wonderful it'll be in that heaven. I don't think we're gonna fully understand
You're
how
right.
bad it's gonna be on the other side.
How wonderful it is on one extreme and how bad it is on the other extreme. You know, we don't grasp that. All right. I thank you so much, Sean. Probably going to call on you again. Absolutely. Is there anything that you would like to offer to our listeners, to something that you feel like that in our format we didn't talk about that you really would like to talk about?
I think we went over basically everything that I was thinking about. The Sermon on the Mount, I don't believe is something is going to be perfected by any means, and I don't even know if it's something we can do at a day-to-day basis, but it's something we need to study and look at, because I think Christ went to the heart of a lot of matters, and at least for us to know when these things pop up that we need to think about it and try to ingrain it in us. And I think, can it be lived out to a day-to-day basis? Is it impossible, or is it just really hard?
Yeah.
And that's the question. I was like, because if it's just really hard, then what are we willing to do the hard things to get to where we need to be? because there's not a lot of things that are impossible, but there are a lot of things that are really hard. And like and nobody likes to do hard things, but sometimes we may have to push ourselves to do the hard things.
You are absolutely right. And sometimes loving when someone is spitting on you is a pretty hard thing. It absolutely is, and you're exactly right. I do so appreciate you guys continuing to tune into us here on Journey with Christ. I hope that in the coming days we continue to bless you and give you insight into things. We will do these things as long as people still want them, and or maybe not, but as long as I'm able. But anyway, I hope you continually to check in with us this coming Sunday. Would love to have you at Park Avenue. We just would encourage you so much to get out to find your way back to a home church, and we would love if you give us a shot. God bless and have a great day. And say bye to everybody.